Think about the best person that you know, who's always on time, who's never rude, even on Reddit, who serves on 4 committees, who reports $2 tips on her taxes, who wouldn't dream of swiping the hair off the sink and then claiming she cleaned the bathroom. How does that person, the best person that anyone knows, end up on the wrong side of Jesus? The Pharisees are well respected by their community. They're almost inhumanly well behaved and devoted to getting it right. They go the speed limit when everybody else around them is driving 90. They write their own essays when the rest of the class is pasting ChatGPT. If their religion says, "Stay pure and uncorrupted," they'll scrub 2 layers of skin off after touching the gas pump. If the law says to give God 10% of the harvest, they'll save God 10% of the dill from the window pot. It's tempting to write these guys off as spiritual hypochondriacs, but really, they're just people with convictions who are better than most at living them out. I have convictions about what kind of treatment humans owe to animals. I've still enjoyed more than one bacon cheeseburger this month, but some people are really doing it, eating fungus on buns in the name of righteousness. I have convictions about how watching graphic violence and sex cheapens life and objectifies people. I've still watched all the incarnations of Jack Reacher. But some people actually put down their remotes and go pro at Catan. Honestly, I respect anyone who seeks to live out their convictions with consistency. God bless the Pharisees and activists and homeschoolers and saints using composting toilets, and the 3 people left on earth who don't pay for Amazon Prime. Jesus and the Pharisees have a lot in common. There's a reason why Jesus seeks them out, why they so often end up at the same dinner parties. Maybe no other group of people in the 1st century Jewish world was closer to Jesus' own beliefs. But there's also a reason that encounters between Jesus and the Pharisees often end in conflict. The Pharisees have a problem that's common among passionate types. They're so busy being right about all the things that they have trouble distinguishing the big things from the small things. Now, we probably all know people like this. People so right, they lose the plot line. People who seem to save their biggest emotions for the smallest stuff. It's great to pursue integrity in all aspects of your life, but there are some practical problems with falling into a habit of majoring on the minors. One problem is that you tend to multiply enemies faster than friends. The Pharisees and Jesus worship the same God. They have many of the same goals. They want everyone to devote all they have and are to God. They want people to hear what God has to say and do something about it. But the Pharisees can't see Jesus clearly. They can't see how evil flees when he shows up. They can't see how people become more God-hungry when they're around him. Because all they can see, what they're fixated on, is the fact that Jesus doesn't always wash his hands at the right times. Another problem with making the small stuff big is we tend to compensate by making the big stuff smaller. And this is Jesus' primary criticism of the Pharisees. The issue isn't that they're wrong about much. The issue is that they're so busy policing the outer boundaries of everybody's rightness that they end up neglecting the big, fat, beautiful center of their faith. Imagine a nurse who's so obsessed with the rules of proper sanitation that she spends all day inspecting fingernails and ejecting hospital guests who clear their throats. Obviously, no one wants a nurse who sneezes in her hands and leaves needles on the floor, but it's also not much good to have the world's best glover who never gets around to dispensing medicine. This is what happens to the Pharisees. They're so occupied with the details of keeping their hands clean that they've completely lost the plot on love of God and love of neighbor, also known as justice. As Jesus points out, it's of limited good to be right on 1,000 things if you're neglecting the 2 main things that God wants most. That's like bringing your wife flowers and chocolates when she asked you to listen when she talks. You should bring home the truffles, absolutely. But anyone who thinks that truffles substitute for ears will likely not be married long. It turns out a person can love being right without ever loving God. We can follow the rules and keep our hands clean and still not do a bit of good for our neighbors. Righteousness without love is like a golden cup without any water inside. It might look pretty, but it's not worth much to a world that's dying of thirst. According to Jesus, when it comes to faith, it's possible to ace the test and still fail the course. This is what happens when people know all the answers but don't comprehend their purpose. The reason we keep our hands clean is so we can assist in the healing of others. Purity without purpose is just prudery. Righteousness without justice is just empty noise. If we don't major on the majors, the minors lose their point. Let's read what Jesus has to say in Luke 11, beginning in verse 37. As Jesus was speaking, one of the Pharisees invited him home for a meal. So he went in and took his place at the table. His host was amazed to see that he sat down to eat without first performing the hand-washing ceremony required by Jewish custom. Then the Lord said to him, "You Pharisees are so careful to clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside you're filthy, full of greed and wickedness. Fools! Didn't God make the inside as well as the outside? So clean the inside by giving gifts to the poor, and then you will be clean all over. What sorrow awaits you, Pharisees! For you are careful to tithe even the tiniest amount from your herb gardens, but you ignore justice and the love of God. You should tithe, yes, but do not neglect the more important things. What sorrow awaits you, Pharisees, for you love to sit in the seats of honor in the synagogues and receive respectful greetings when you walk in the marketplace. Yes, what sorrows await you, for you are like hidden graves in a field. People walk over them without knowing the corruption they're stepping on." I'm Megan Larissa Good, and this has been Reading Jesus. If you would like a discussion guide to aid you in your conversation or reflections, you can go to patreon.com/JesusCollectiveCommunity and look for the Luke 11 post. Thanks so much for joining me for a few minutes in Luke, and I'll see you next time.